Is the United States going to war with Iran? I'm Steven, your host here at NewsChat Today, and we're diving deep into what could be a major turning point for the U.S. and the Middle East. That question is no longer just speculation. It's a looming possibility that's unfolding in real time. And what's happening right now may be one of the most dangerous escalations we've seen in the Middle East in years. This is NewsChat Today, and we're breaking down the fast-moving crisis and what it means for the U.S., for Iran, and for the entire world. It all started, or rather escalated, when President Trump abruptly left the G7 summit in Canada. His departure wasn't scheduled, it wasn't planned, and it wasn't subtle. He told reporters he had to return to Washington for what he described as serious matters. But then came something far more alarming. Trump warned the Iranian people to evacuate their capital, Tehran, immediately. Let's be clear, presidents don't make statements like that without real consequences. This was no diplomatic bluff. This was a signal that something much bigger was unfolding, perhaps something irreversible. Inside the White House, Trump convened the National Security Council in an emergency session. And even though the United States hasn't officially entered this conflict, Trump declared that America now had complete and total control over Iranian airspace. That raised red flags worldwide. How could the U.S. control Iranian skies without being part of the war? Then came another message. This one even more extreme. Trump called for Iran's unconditional surrender, not a ceasefire, not talks, not even terms, a total capitulation. That kind of language has consequences, and it often precedes action. Observers quickly began to ask, is this about Iran, or is this about Trump's political problems here at home? The truth is, President Trump has long shown a pattern of using foreign policy to deflect attention from domestic challenges. In the past, when public pressure built over his ties to Russia, he suddenly ramped up threats against Vladimir Putin. When consumer backlash flared over tariffs on China, he carved out exemptions for tech products to ease the noise. Now, with poor polling on almost every major domestic issue and major legislation facing roadblocks in Congress, war could be the ultimate distraction. And for any president, war brings something else: power. A nation in conflict gives the executive branch sweeping emergency authority. Trump's legal team has floated the idea of using wartime conditions to activate older powers like the Alien Enemies Act. Those powers could halt legal cases, suppress dissent, even reshape media coverage. It wouldn't be the first time war powers were used to bypass the normal rules of government. But even if Trump doesn't formally declare war, the courts have made it clear since 9/11. Undeclared wars still expand presidential reach, and a few cruise missiles might be all it takes to move that process forward. Some Republicans argue Trump would never do it, that he's historically been a dove on Iran. But that version of Trump is fading. The one we see today speaks fondly of military strength, parades, and overwhelming force. This is the same Trump who authorized Marines to patrol American streets during civil unrest. The idea that his militarism stops at U.S. borders is wishful thinking. He's also got a model in mind: Israel. Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu share more than an alliance, they share a governing style. Netanyahu's hardline military moves have bolstered his power during political crises. His war with Hamas has helped silence internal dissent and tighten his grip on office. It's not hard to imagine Trump taking notes. So far, Israel's strikes on Iran have been swift and devastating. They've taken out top Iranian military leaders and key nuclear scientists. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed direct hits on centrifuge facilities and underground enrichment halls. These attacks have deeply wounded Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And now reports say Trump is considering joining that campaign, not with words, but with 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs aimed at Iran's underground Fordo facility. That's not posturing, that's war planning. But what happens after that? The U.S. government hasn't said. There's been no public discussion of strategy, no explanation of what comes next. Just vague threats and shadowy intelligence. And that silence is alarming, especially when we've been down this road before. In 2003, America invaded Iraq under the belief that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. No such weapons were found, but a bloody insurgency followed. It lasted years and cost thousands of American lives. Iraq never fully stabilized and may never recover. In Afghanistan, the mission began to defeat al-Qaeda. But the war stretched 2 decades, ending in a rushed U.S. withdrawal that left the Taliban in control again. And in Libya, the U.S. helped oust Muammar Gaddafi, only to leave behind a fractured, unstable nation where militias and extremists now thrive. Trump knows this history. In fact, he used it to launch his political career. He famously blasted President George W. Bush during the 2016 Republican debates, calling the Iraq War a big, fat mistake. He promised to never repeat it. So why is he now inching toward the same mistake he once condemned? One answer may be found in Trump's speeches. Just last month, speaking in Saudi Arabia, he mocked the so-called nation builders, saying they ruined more countries than they rebuilt. He said their efforts were foolish, intervening in societies they didn't understand. Now, critics argue he's on the verge of becoming exactly what he warned against. Iran is not Iraq, it's not Afghanistan, it's not Libya, it's bigger, it's more developed, and it has allies, Hezbollah, proxies across the region, and the ability to launch sophisticated cyber attacks. If the Iranian regime feels cornered, they may retaliate directly against U.S. forces or allies. They could shut down the Strait of Hormuz, a critical oil route that could trigger an international energy crisis. They could hit Saudi oil fields, they could target American bases in Iraq, Syria, or the Gulf. They might even take the fight online, crippling infrastructure or financial systems in the U.S. And if their government collapses under pressure, the aftermath could be catastrophic. Iran is home to over 90 million people, diverse, divided, and sitting on fault lines of ethnicity, religion, and ideology. A sudden power vacuum could trigger civil war, create new terror groups, or unleash a flood of refugees into Europe and neighboring countries. It could destabilize Pakistan, stress NATO, and bring chaos across the region. And then there's the nuclear issue. If strikes hit uranium stockpiles or research labs, who secures those materials? What happens if radioactive elements fall into the wrong hands? The consequences could be global and long-term. But for Israel, and by extension for Trump, the calculation is different. Netanyahu has said that a nuclear Iran poses an existential threat to Israel. For him, the risk of chaos may be preferable to the risk of annihilation. That urgency is what's pushing this situation closer and closer to open conflict. And with Trump now declaring air dominance over Iran, the line between watching and warring is blurring fast. As of now, Trump has refused to say whether he'll order strikes. "I may do it," he told reporters, "I may not." That ambiguity may be intentional, or it may be reckless. But we've seen this story before: strong words, questionable intelligence, an airstrike, followed by years of bloodshed and no clear victory. Section 60 at Arlington National Cemetery is filled with the consequences of such decisions. Iran's leadership, for its part, is defiant. Their UN mission issued a scathing response, denying Trump's claim that Iran wants to negotiate. "We do not negotiate under duress," they said, certainly not with a has-been warmonger clinging to relevance. At the same time, Israeli attacks continue. The military just announced new strikes in Tehran and western Iran, targeting helicopters and other military assets. Independent verification is limited, but the frequency of strikes is undeniable. Meanwhile, on the ground in Israel, restrictions are easing. Civilians are slowly returning to work in areas with shelters, and small gatherings are allowed again. That suggests Israeli officials believe the immediate threat of Iranian retaliation may be decreasing, at least for now. But make no mistake, the war drums are still beating, and the United States is standing right next to them. Whether Trump actually pulls the trigger or lets this moment pass remains to be seen. But even now, the U.S. may already be involved, financially, strategically, and possibly even militarily. And if a strike is ordered, the world will change overnight. You've been watching NewsChat Today. Stay tuned as we track every development in this growing conflict. If the United States goes to war with Iran, history will remember this moment. Subscribe, leave a comment below, and tell us, Should the U.S. get involved, or is this another war we can't afford to fight?